Welcome to Dysfunctionally Yours, the podcast where we embrace the chaos, laugh through the struggles, and find hope on the other side of trauma. I'm your host, Brittany, and if you've ever felt like your life was a beautifully messy roller coaster of dysfunction, trust me, you're in good company. Here, we'll have real, raw, and sometimes ridiculous conversations about mental health, relationships, and healing, because let's be honest, life isn't always pretty, but that doesn't mean we can't come out of it stronger and maybe even smiling. So grab a cup of coffee or a glass of bubbles, and let's navigate this wild journey together, dysfunctionally, but never alone.
Welcome back, friends, to another episode of Dysfunctionally Yours, and I'm your host, Brittany. Happy freaking day, right? Like, welcome to this glorious Monday that you're listening to this on. I want to say I love a good Monday. Like, I am not that person that's like, ew, Monday. No, I actually really like Mondays. I dislike Tuesdays. Tuesdays are my day of the week that I'm like, ew, why is this day even here? Why is this day even on the calendar at all? It makes no sense to me at all. Monday, start of the week, right? You're like, oh, cool, it's Monday. It's the start of the week, whatever, it's gonna get back to the grind. I always appreciate it. I really like work. So I'm like, yeah, I'm back at work. I had such a restful weekend and now I am back. But Tuesdays, what is the point? Wednesday, you're like, I'm halfway there. Thursday, you're like, I'm basically there. And also, even as a little kid, Thursdays were my favorite day of the week because that was good TV. Good TV nights were Thursday nights. So Thursday was always something to look forward to regardless because TV. Now that's not necessarily the same because I don't have TV. I just stream whatever on like Netflix or Hulu or whatevs. But Thursday was known for good TV night. So, all right, great. And then Friday, you're done. And now you're at the weekend and great. So even as a little kid, right, you get out of school, you can go play later. You can spend the night with your friends. You can do whatever. As an adult, you're like, whew, I don't have to go back to work. And I say this even having done shift work for a long time. And it didn't matter if it was Friday or Saturday or Sunday. Chances are I was at work, and it didn't matter if it was a holiday or anything. So I do say that knowing that Monday through Friday is not everybody's work week, but I still that was just how my brain was programmed. Even in shift work, the weekends operate differently. So it's kind of like, okay, I know I'm just excited. I'm excited for a weekend. I'm excited for Mondays. So I like Mondays is my point. Happy Monday. That's why we release on Mondays, because I like Monday. And now like the method to my madness on picking a release date. Also, these bubbles are flat. These bubbles are flat. I have so much. I'm a disaster right now. You can't see it unless you're on the YouTube, but like I got this weird nail polish. Well, I got the right nail polish. I got the wrong gel overcoat. And so I accidentally bought, because they were out of my standard go-to. This is why I don't try new things. For real. I bought my go-to nail polish, same color I've worn since the dawn of time. Actually, since probably like 2011. So dawn of time. But I bought a different gel overcoat because they didn't have mine. And I put it on and it like never dries. It's a gel coat that you actually have to have a machine to cure it. I didn't know that. Like, what? This again, why are we trying new things? I don't know. Won't happen again. So anyways, I had to take it off because it just kept dripping down my hands. Like the gel would just like drip down my hands. It never would dry. And I was like, what is wrong with this? It wasn't until I like read the bottle that apparently I'm supposed to cure it. And I guess I need a machine to do that. So that's cool. So anyways, I had to take it all off. And now I just have all of the dark nail polish of nail polish past in like don't look. I'm insecure. My fingernail insecurities. And now you know. If you didn't know, now you do. I have nail polish, fingernail insecurities. Is that weird? You know what? I don't care if it's weird or not. Anyways, I was talking about how these bubbles, they're flat. I had some bubbles the other day and I was like, shoot, I don't want to open a whole new bottle for the podcast. So I'm just going to save these bubbles and put them in the refrigerator for me for the podcast. And I just took a drink out of them and they're flat and it tastes like rosé. So it's not bad, but it's like when you thought it was going to be bubbly and it's not, that is a problem. It's not a problem. It's just like you're thrown off, right? Like if you think you're taking a drink of apple juice and it's actually the white grape juice, you're like, what the hell did I just drink? Yeah. So it's like that. Relatable or nah? That's okay. Keep it moving. Also, I just realized that it is, the last week of the month, and I had set a goal for April. My goal for April was that I was going to master my bedroom closet. It is chaos. It is just absolute, oh my God, it's like a bomb dropped in there and then exploded and made it chaotic. And part of the bomb drop is actually the kittens. They like to go in there, pull things off the hangers, mess everything up. They managed to get into shoe boxes and take out like the inserts that would go into like my boots to keep their form and shape. They take them out, they play with them. It's chaotic. On top of the fact that there's just a lot in there. So I was like, I'm going to really, really spend some time over the course of the month organizing this closet. So what do? I take everything out and it's just laying in the middle of the floor. There's so much of it and piled onto my dresser to like hang up, reorganize, whatever. There's so much chaos that the chaos causes me anxiety and then I don't know where to start. And so now it's just chaos in my room that has been there since the first week of April in this like my hallway that has my closet. I have like a little hallway in my bedroom. And so the hallway that my closets are in, you can't walk through that hallway now at all because there's so much crap in there. And I keep telling myself that I'm going to tackle it. I'm going to get to it. And then I look at it for 2 seconds and it almost makes me want to cry. And so I'm like, just kidding. I'm going to read a book instead. But now here we are. And I have to get it done because that was my goal for the month. And instead of even getting the goal done, I made it worse. And so now it's a worse problem than it was because at least before it was all shoved into the closet. Now it's out of the closet for me to stare at. The inside of the closet looks pretty all right. It's pretty empty. Does anybody else have this problem? Like the problem of like when a mess starts, having too much anxiety to fix it, but then knowing that it needs to be fixed because it causes more anxiety and like this disruption in your space. You know what I mean, right? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Okay. I see you. Me too. What do you do to fix it? What do you help a girl out? Also, would ADHD meds help that? Like, for real? Could that be, is that the route I need to go? I don't know. I don't really want to do that. That's why I drink so much caffeine. Okay. Anyways, inner workings of my brain this week or this morning, either or. All right, let's talk about the ache and relief of the week. So my ache of the week has got to be having conversations surrounding finances with my adult children. I hate it. I hate it. Can I go back to the day where we could just talk about normal things like, why did you push the little girl down in the mud, and getting a normal answer like, well, she took my hat and threw it in the mud. True story. Like that, I would like to have that conversation much more than I want to talk about the breakdowns of phone bill and Wi-Fi. I don't like it. I in fact dislike it a lot. So much, and I don't want to do it. And that is my ache. And it's my ache every time it happens. So, hey, yay. But my relief of the week is that I got new sheets. I am so excited about these sheets. I was walking through the store, not for sheets. I was actually walking through the store because I needed to pick up an emergency bag of cat food before the Chewy delivery gets here. Again, not happy about this either. But regardless, I needed to go into the store to grab an emergency bag of cat food. And then I saw these sheets. So freaking adorable. I saw them. They caught my eye immediately. I've never been so excited to buy sheets probably in my whole entire life. And I was like, I don't need sheets. I like my sheets that I already have, but these are so cute. They're too cute not to have, and I need them, and they will make my soul feel better. And so I bought them and they're on my bed. And whenever I climbed into bed last night, into these new sheets that now smelled like fabric softener and, all the cozies. And just because of how cute they were, I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest feeling of all. And I was just really excited about new sheets. Again, I really feel like these are the things that I get excited about the older I get. Couple months ago, it was a vacuum. I was ecstatic about a vacuum. Now it's sheets. Last week, I talked about drinking sleepy time tea and being in bed at 7 o'clock. I'm a little old lady. And I don't mean to be. It's just what brings me comfort and joy. All right. So with all of that, you guys have been asking about my brothers. And I want to acknowledge that I have not been ignoring it. Really needed to put a lot of thought and effort into the delivery of how I talk about my brothers, because like I said last week, my brothers, much like my children, are this very sacred piece of me. And I want to be able to articulate their introduction in a way that leaves zero regrets. And, sort of that, like when you go to the woods or you go hiking, like leave no trace, leave no harm. And so I really just needed to be very careful and make sure that I was in a position where I could also just talk about like the impact that my brothers had on me over the course of what is like 31 years versus like, all about them, because this is not their podcast, it is mine. So with that, I was an only child for a long time. For a very long time. And every Christmas, every birthday, whenever I would make a list, I asked for a little brother or sister. I wanted a sibling so bad. There was nothing in me that wanted to be an only child at all. And so I wanted a sibling and I asked for one every Christmas on a Christmas list. Also wished for world peace, baby brother or sister, and maybe some rollerblades. And then I was so jealous. Not jealous. I'll talk about that again later, the word jealous. But I was very envious of my friends that had siblings, right? I just had like friend sibling envy because they got to spend time with siblings and I didn't. And so a lot of times I was not just friends with my friends, but I was also like friends and friendly enough with some of their siblings or a lot of their siblings, depending on how many. And that just made me happy. I like to have a sibling. How great would it be? And then I was in 7th grade and finally my parents say, hey, we're going to have a baby. This is the best news of my entire life. Hands down, 100%. I believed that this was the greatest gift given to me in my whole life was my little brother. And I was so invested in like my rattlesnake's pregnancy. I watched my brother be born. I was there in the delivery room. I went to all of these appointments with her. I was so excited to be a big sister. And then when he was born, I would keep him with me as much as I could. I'm a big reader. I've always been a big reader. I also was grounded a lot. And so I read a lot when I was grounded, but I would keep Chance with me as much as I possibly could. Like if he was crying in the nighttime and I could get to him before the rattlesnake did, I would go and I would just sit in there with his little rocking chair and I would rock him and hold him. I just adored him. He was so cute and I was just so tickled pink to have him. And, I would read and prop him up on my bed and he'd just lay in bed with me while I was sitting there reading a book and, he would just coo. And sometimes I would read out loud to him. I definitely read Jurassic Park to him out loud. I don't know if that is tiny baby appropriate, but that's what we did. And to be fair, my brother now to this day reads more than I do. He has an entire library, literally a library. Books are very much his jam. And will I take credit for that? Of course I will, because I was exposing him to all of the reading when he was a teeny tiny little nugget and I was reading Jurassic Park to him. So is that how that works? I don't know, but Is that how I'm going to make it work in my head? Abso-freaking-lutely. So I kept him with me as much as I possibly could. That all being said, he started to walk and talk, and he would just like show up in my room, and I would be on the phone, and I would get in trouble for talking on the phone in front of him. But like, what am I supposed to do? He came in here. So I would bribe him to go away. I would like give him pennies to bribe him to go away. Like, oh, here's a penny. Go show mom to put it in your piggy bank. And then I think the rattlesnake realized what I was doing. And so then I got in trouble for doing that as well. But it's like, you don't want me to talk on the phone in front of him because my conversations are not appropriate. But now you're mad at him for me, like mad at me for shooing him away. I don't know. Like, this is also like, he's very cool and also not my responsibility to take care of. And I should be able to talk on the phone. So, you know, it was complicated to be like a 13-year-old kid, a 14-year-old kid with this itty bitty baby that just, you know, toddles around and wants to be with you all the time. So it caused some issues. Like Chance was about 2.5 when Chase was born. Chase, that was a different situation. I was in 9th grade now, so my freshman year in high school. They tell me that they're pregnant, having another baby. This was not what I wanted to hear. Like, I remember they called me into their bedroom. They told me, and my response was, why? I didn't ask for another sibling. I asked for one. Like, what are we doing here? And I ran away from home. Is that selfish? Sure. Is that 14-year-old teenage girl behavior? Yes. Don't come at me. I was furious about it. This is not at all what I wanted. And then whenever he was born, I didn't want to go to the hospital at all. That was not of any interest to me. And then whenever I was forced to go to the hospital, I was not going to go in and see this baby. Like, somewhere in my brain, I had it in my brain that I was going to never meet this baby. I don't know how that made sense in my brain, but it did. And so I sat out in the hallway of the hospital, and I was just sitting on the floor because I was like, I'm not even going in there. And my dad comes out and he looks at me and he's like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm sitting out here waiting for us to go. I don't want to go in there. My dad then tells me that I'm being very selfish and acting like a brat. And then ends up getting me like a TV and a VCR for my bedroom. It might not have happened in that. I feel like the way I'm telling it makes it sound like my parents were like bribing me to care. I don't think that was the case at all. It just is in a timeline there. And I remember my parents being like, yes, you do probably deserve a little bit more space so that you're not always around with the little babies, and you know, we'll let you have a TV and a VCR in your room so that you can, you know, be in your room a little bit more. And so like that was fine. I was like, all right, cool. But I, you know, now I'm like 14, 15 years old. Somewhere in here is also when I'm getting myself in trouble for beating up my mom. And I have a lot of other things that are going on in my life for me as a teenager, right? And so I am going to work and school and trying to spend as much time as I possibly can with my friends. And it's anything to avoid my house, and not to avoid my brothers, of course. They were just happened to be in the house. All of this is to avoid as much of the rattlesnake as I possibly could. But there was a lot of like weird things that came from just in that time period, right? Because the rattlesnake would get mad at me, and she would tell me that I was just so like I was jealous of my brothers. And I remember at that time being like, well, of course I'm jealous of my brothers. My brothers have like this really great cushy life, right? Like, you guys are nice, you guys aren't doing drugs, you guys aren't drinking, you guys aren't beating them up, you guys aren't doing all of these things that I endured. So of course I'm jealous of that, but I wouldn't take that away from them. So all that to be said, this is where I learned like some of these words are being used incorrectly. Brené Brown had said at one point that language shapes emotions. And so a lot of times you can have the same emotion, anxiety and excitement can be the same, but depending on how you're using it in your vocabulary, it's going to change the context of what we're talking about. If I said that I was excited to be in Costco, it would sound like I was really having a great time. Like, we're basically having a party now. However, when I'm saying I have so much anxiety going into Costco, it automatically is saying this doesn't sound like a thing that I want to do. So the same is said with jealous and envy. These words are actually not the same at all. And so to give it context in my adult brain that I didn't have there, I was in fact not jealous of my brothers because that would be a fear of like losing something that I already have. I never had that, so I can't be jealous of losing it. But to be able to say that like I was envious of that, sure. Would I have liked that childhood? 100%. That would have been lovely. And would I do anything to jeopardize that or take that away from my little brothers who are like 2 and 4 years old when these conversations are happening? No. I would never wish any harm upon my siblings. But I think that is where some of like what falls later in the rattlesnake spent a lot of time driving wedges between the family. And I think it started that early on for the brothers, which is actually very unfortunate. So anyway, I ended up moving out. I got pregnant. I moved out. I was 17. And so my brothers weren't that old, right? They're little. Like Chance is like 5 when I moved out, and Chase is 2.5 years younger than that. And so I'm gone at an early age for them and for a significant part of their life, right? Because I have moved away. I had Corbin, I had, my marriage. I would come back and see them and visit, but it was also very different, right? Like I would come home and visit, and then I'm going to their little league games, their lacrosse games or soccer games or whatever. But then they're spending time with Corbin and Caden, not necessarily with me, right? Like they're little kids, and the little kids are out running amok in the woods or on the fields or, pretending to, or not pretending, but like playing, Marco Polo or whatever little kids do in the swimming pool. And I'm just an adult. I'm just another grown up, right? I am Corbin and Caden's mom. So I am enforcing rules to them. And then I see my brothers and they see me as just another adult in the house that has like rules. And so that was a tricky time, right? I think like that distance and that like it just creates this weird void. And then because of that age difference between us, it created a lot of just challenging circumstances when it came to having like a sibling relationship. But what was very cool was watching the 4 boys just be off together all the time. Like that was very cool. And so the 4 boys were very, very tight. And there was a brief moment in time where Caden lived with my rattlesnake and Chance and Chase. And so he was very, very tight with them. He lived with them. I do think I had some impact on Chance. Chance was around me for a little bit longer, and, Chance wanted to join band and he wanted to play the flute. And it was like, oh, well, that's cool because I played the flute, right? And I don't know if it was a story that was told me or the story that I told myself, but it was very much that like, oh, Chance wanted to play the flute because of me, because of his big sister. I don't know if that has any truth to it or not, but that was what I took out of that. And so he played the flute and he read books. And so we could bond over things like that. But it was still like this disconnect because of that age gap. I also think that in this amount of time, as the boys are starting to get older, and time continues to go by, I think the wedge that the rattlesnake was driving between everybody in the family was getting more and more and more obvious. Or maybe it was just obvious to me because I didn't live there and I wasn't stuck in the thick of it anymore. But she drove a huge wedge between everybody, right? I had said like she would come at me for being so envious of my brothers and use that as like a negative thing instead of being like, no, of course, I'm happy for my brothers, but I'm a little sad for me as a child that I didn't have that. So yeah, and that's weird that you would not understand that. And then my dad worked out of town a lot, and she would do some really bizarre things as far as parenting goes. And, she didn't want to, because she was with the boys more, she didn't want to always be the bad guy. And then my dad just come into town, and that's when they're all having so much fun. And so she would hold off and like let my dad enforce consequences, but consequences that might have been way later. So then the boys just saw my dad as this like consequence enforcing ass. And it wasn't like that at all. But this was some major manipulation that was going on. She also started referring to my dad as Uncle Phil to my brothers, and they would call him that. how disrespectful, how wildly, like unforgivably disrespectful. And the fact that you as the mother are encouraging this and driving this wedge, even though you don't have to work, you get to be the stay-at-home mom of these teenage boys, like they're teenagers, and you get to go on all these vacations and do whatever you want while he's out of town. Like you are just, and then you want to boo-hoo about how poor off you are, how horrible your life is. Like wild. But this is what they're hearing. And I know they're hearing it because I'm hearing it and I don't even live in the same state as them. And like she's going on and on and on to me about it. Or whenever we do go down there to visit, if he's not there, she's making all of these like nasty, jabby comments that they're hearing. And again, with the Uncle Phil, like just, I cannot. So disrespectful. And so she did a lot of those types of things. She also, even when the boys were much littler, I think she took a lot of pride in just being as awful as humanly possible. And so there was a moment in time where she was like, I don't trust you to even babysit your own brothers. So I'm going to ask your best friend to do it. And so she would call my best friend and she would ask my best friend to come over and babysit and tell me that I had to leave the house. I couldn't even be in the house. So I had to go find something else to do so that she could have my best friend babysit my brothers. That's so fucking weird. And then, you know, she kept that up for a really long time. And at one point in time, like the best friend became a not best friend anymore. And I remember we were walking through, it was one of the last days of school of my sophomore year. And we were walking through the hallways and she's walking behind me talking shit as teenage girls do. And she's like, even like her own mom doesn't even like her. And her brother likes me more than he likes her. And I turn around and I grab this girl's head and slammed it into a wall. And I walked myself to the dean's office and I walked in and I said, Doris. I didn't call her Doris. That was just her name, but I didn't call her that. Like I did this. I ran her head into the wall and then security, of course, is running in right behind me. And they're like, oh, you brought yourself in. The security, what they're not security, but like the school resource officer, like the SRO, she runs in and she's like, did you tell Doris what happened? And I was like, yes, I did tell Doris what happened. And she's like, all right. And Doris was just looking at me and she's like, you can't do that. You know, like, how am I supposed to suspend you? We're in finals week. And I'm like, this is what she said. This is what I did. Like, there's no shame in my game right now. Like, she should not have said that. So, you know, shit like that happened. So obviously I think my rattlesnake really hung on to things like that. And she knew just how to, like, the web that she would weave that would get us all so entangled in it to where it's like, we're doing the things, right? Like, I can't blame my mom that I ran homegirl's head into the wall, but also, like, why would you have me and my best friend in a situation why is that the situation that you're putting teenage girls in? That's weird. And so it was the same thing, like, as the boys got older and like the situation, like some of the things she would say to the boys about my dad. And so it's tainting everybody's viewpoints of one another. She would call me and she would, you know, tell me all these horrible things that Chase did. And so I'm like mad at Chase because my mom's like, oh, I'm afraid of him and I have to do this and I have to lock my door. And so, like, I am mad at my brother. Why am I mad at a little kid? Like, you know, it sounds plausible that this is true. And I'm like worried about my mom. But then, like, in the bigger picture, like, if you were that worried, why didn't you do something like helpful or productive instead of just calling me? And why are you telling me that anyways? Because then it's like makes me not want to have my own children around him. And that's not fair because he's never done anything to my children and they're all tight. They're close. So she just so manipulative on like how the relationships were managed. And then as the boys kept getting older and older and older, like, we would talk on the phone, but they would answer the phone if it was me and they would like pretend that I was their friend. They'd answer the phone and be like, hey, Billy. I'm not Billy. Hey, Billy, I'm at lunch with my mom. Can I call you back? And it's like they would sneak around to talk to me because they didn't want to deal with the backlash from her. So if we fast forward, like, you know, over some of all of those other pieces, we get to where, you know, Chance has gotten himself in a little bit of trouble and I fly back home to go to court with him. This woman shows up late to court, walks up while we're all talking to Chance's attorney, and she just interrupts and then is mad that nobody will say hi to her. I haven't spoken to her in a long time at that point. Anyways, but I was just like, hey, Tracy. And she loses her mind that I called her Tracy. You will not call me Tracy. I am your mother. Blah, 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 blah. You're not my mom. You're not, no. And the attorney had to shush her. Then we go into court and she's making comments while the judge is talking, and the judge had to shush her. She's just an embarrassment and making this whole thing all about her. And we're like, can we not even do this? Like, mind your business. Leave me alone. You don't actually need to talk to me, actually. And so she's just in there acting a fool. This is kind of what she does. You know, my cousin that I mentioned a couple episodes ago that had passed away, who I fly back home for that too, right? For her funeral. I'm talking to my aunt. The rattlesnake walks up, completely ignores that I'm standing there, starts talking to my aunt, like doesn't even say hello to me or anything. I haven't seen her in a couple years at this point. Doesn't say a word, just starts talking to my aunt. And then I look over at her and I was like, hi. And she's like, oh, hello, Brittany, and storms off. And like my poor aunt is standing there, right, at a funeral for her daughter, and you're going to treat your daughter that way. Like, again, just so disrespectful to other people, not even just me. Like, this point, I don't care if you talk to my ass or not, but like, could you pay attention to other people, like to see what's going on? So there were things that she did like that. And those types of behaviors impact the relationship that I'm able to have with my own brothers. So it's now Chance is, spending some time in his retreat. And this is where Chance and I are able to really rekindle this relationship, because what I am is supportive as fuck. And so all of the phone calls, all of the letters, I spent so much time writing letters, reading letters on the phone, getting phone calls at bizarre times of the night, and having to stop everything that I'm doing to take these calls, because how could you not, right? When you're getting a prepaid call from inside, like you're going to answer the phone. And Chance and I got really, really close over this. And it was in this time we almost used each other as like a journal, right? It was just writing all the stuff down and mailing it back and forth, and really getting to see some of the inner workings and inner thoughts of one another. And in this time, Chance tells me that he had been angry with me for so long. And I'm like, why are you angry at me? And he's like, you left us. You left us, and you left us there. You could have saved us. And this broke my heart, because like, I wish, right? I wish I could have, but I had to go protect myself and my own children. And I didn't realize how bad things had been for my brothers. And so my brothers are like Chance is telling me all of these things that are going on, and or that have happened, or that's been said to him and stuff. And I realized at that time that there might not have been the same level of drinking and drugs, but rattlesnakes don't change. Like, a snake is still a snake. And she was just as venomous and poisonous and lethal to them as she was to me. It just looked a little bit different, but the end results were the same. The feeling unsafe, the feeling of being devalued, the feeling of being unheard, the emotional and mental abuse and torture, it was still there. Apparently that wasn't all alcohol or drug induced. That's just who she is. And so, we really, we developed a very good, solid relationship over this period of time. And it obviously came with pros and cons, right? The pro obviously is that I have a relationship with my brother right now. We really get to know each other as like adults at this point. And so that was great. But the downside, the con of that was that I had so much anxiety and fear for what was happening in my brother's world. I stopped sleeping. I was just an extreme basket case. And my world at that point was revolving around these phone calls and making sure letters were getting sent and trying to be strong, but also being so fearful. I mean, it did a lot to my own system, and now how I'm navigating my own world. And I, again, had to spend a lot of time in therapy trying to figure out what I had control over and what I didn't have control over, and realizing that I don't have any control over this situation. And so the only thing that I can do is what I can do. And that is these letters, and that is commissary, and that is phone calls. And so that's what I was going to do there. That was the plan. Chase Chase had a lot of his own stuff as well as he was a teenager. And there was a moment in time where Chase had called me up and he was like, "Can I come stay with you? I think I need to get out of here. I think I could be better there." And I was like, "Yep, let me see what I can do." And so I talked to my dad, who's working out of town. I email my parents and I'm like, "Hey, even if it's just for the summer, can he come here? Can we get a break? I have rules. The boys are here. The boys are involved in their stuff. If he's old enough, he can get a job." Like, really trying to get this kid a way out. And my dad at that time was like, "Yeah, we could see about, figuring something out." And of course, the rattlesnake was like, "Oh, hell no. Like, you basically need to stay out of this." And then said that if Chase left state lines, like if he got on a plane or if he took a bus or anything, she'd press like kidnapping charges. And so she made this great big threat to us, to my dad as well, which is crazy. He's the dad. And I don't actually know that that is the way that works. But regardless, that was what was said and that's what was told to Chase. And of course, Chase didn't want any of us in trouble. And so he just stayed. And even right before he passed away, he was like, "I think about that all the time. And I just wonder how different my life could have been if they would have let me leave." And I'm like, I think about it all the time now too. Then as he became an adult and he ended up going and spending some time away as well, I think that hit a turning point for us too, because he knows, again, I'm nothing if not supportive. And it doesn't matter. I'm going to be there for you in those moments. And so he reached out and was like, "Hey, I need you." All right, here I am, back to my letters and phone calls and things like that. And so we were able to like redevelop this relationship that had been relatively strained because, of course, anytime like drugs or anything come up with anybody in my family, parents, siblings, cousins, whatever, I just have a zero tolerance policy. And so I do have to take a step back from that. And so there have been times where I've had to distance myself from my brothers, and that sucks. But like, I just can't do it. It cannot work for me. And so we were able to reconnect and really developed quite an impressive bond. Chase and I are incredibly similar in a lot of ways. And so we were able to just connect in that way, and we process a lot the same way. And a lot of that is very outwardly, right? Whereas I think Chance processes more internally, and Chase and I are much more explosive or emotional about it on the outside. But, there was some major connection there. And I think Chase also navigated the dynamics between the rattlesnake and me and them much differently. Like, he very much didn't care. He very much was like, "Yeah, I was with my sister yesterday. Yeah, I'm going hiking with my sister today." And really didn't care. And if the rattlesnake got too vocal about that with too many opinions, he's like, "Fuck this, I'm gonna go home now." And he would just get up and leave. He doesn't tolerate any of that. He didn't care. And, Chance is not that way. Chance really struggles. He's not really able or allowed to have a sister and a mom. And I know he doesn't defend and protect her to deny that she's terrible. I think he knows that she's terrible, but it's just easier for him than the alternative. And I saw that with my dad too. Like, right? My dad not protecting me because it was just easier than dealing with the wrath of her. And that's how Chance is as well. I was really originally very angry about this. And I'm like, "You are a grown ass man. Like, what the hell?" And then I realized it was much more of a survival tactic for him. He still needs her in whatever capacity he can have her in, and he needs her approval and her attention, and that is something that he just needs. And of course he's going to choose that to meet that need of his versus being like, "No, I can have a sister and a mom." And so I think it's a challenging dynamic, and it sucks, but I wish nothing but the best for my brother. And when we're together, we have a good time. We have lots of laughs. We can joke around. He's ridiculously funny. They both are funny, really smart. We can talk books. We can talk movies. Like, we can talk about all kinds of different things. And, that's always great. But it's a challenging dynamic, and it's only gotten more challenging since Chase passed away. I just think that these are all like long-term consequences of being pitted against each other and the rattlesnake driving a wedge between us. So I I know that there are so many people out there that have beautiful relationships with their siblings, and my relationship with my siblings has had highs and lows, and that's been very hard. But like I said in the very beginning, it's a relationship that I value as much as I value my own children, and I love my brothers so dearly. You know, I hope that, if you have siblings, your relationship is not quite as complicated. I don't wish that level of complication upon anybody, but I know that family dynamics get tricky. And then whenever you were all raised in the same house, right? If we're raised by the same dysfunctional parents, it's safe to say that we're all a little dysfunctional, and then trying to navigate the relationships amongst ourselves outside of dysfunctional parents, that's tricky, and that can be really hard. And I think that leads to some of that estrangement as well, the same way as I was talking about just being, estranged from my parents. I mean, it's not quite as line in the sand. Like, I have a very firm line in the sand. It's not even a line in the sand. It's just a very concrete, a hard pass with the parents. But like, my relationship with my brothers would never be an absolute no way, no go, never know how, because I get them and I know that they get me. I know that they are the only ones that know exactly what I mean whenever I say some of the things and tell some of the stories, and, that they can relate in a different kind of way. So it is a relationship I treasure, and I stand by the fact that Chance was the best present I ever had. And I stand by the fact that Chase was the best friend I ever had. So, with all of that, don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you are listening to this. This podcast releases every Monday on all streaming services, as well as the video version on YouTube at Dysfunctionally Yours. You can engage with the Dysfunctionally Yours podcast on Instagram. That is where you will find that Google form. We are building a community. You can write in. You can say what makes you dysfunctional. There's a new section in there right now for toot your own horn. So go in there, toot your own horn, and that'll be on an episode as well. We're going to keep building this community because people need people. So until next week, don't be afraid to be great. Toodles, poodles, bye.